When talking about static lines, we often see them being vertical or horizontal. We can also see them as being diagonal. And what diagonal does is create drama, and it creates motion with that static line. We'll also add a dynamic line to that, which can be a curvilinear. It can be just another line movement that kind of softens that parallel, that diagonal that we're going to add to this. So I have my basing already started. I've got a container that has foam. I've got a pave of button pom-poms across the top, a little bit of coloring of foliage around the sides. And then I want to add to this. So I'm going to use Birds of Paradise as my diagonal line movement that I want to put through here. And I think I want them to come this direction. So we'll insert those into our foam and follow that line movement to create that diagonal. And what the Birds of Paradise are doing is creating drama in that when we see them. Oftentimes when we think about this and it's going off to this side, it's like, well, what's it doing? Because it's not that comfort that we generally see with some type of a vertical line or horizontal line that gives us stability. This creates interest, and this is what makes you think, what is it doing? What is this design doing? So we're going to create this so that we have this diagonal line moving through, and I want to add to this diagonal line. I also want to bring down that color orange to my very, very base. So I'm going to pull down a smaller one to kind of emphasize that same movement that we have and bring these Birds of Paradise down. So they're right down to that very center. So you can see we've got this line movement going this direction. Now I want to help with this. So we're going to add a diagonal line to the, or add a dynamic line to it. And I have some forsythia that I want to add. I'm going to insert this on this opposite side, but then I'm going to pull it across, and we're going to bind this in to create a reaction with the motion of the line. So I'm just using bind wire, and I'm just taking these brackets that are off of this forsythia, and we're just pulling those across. And it's just to create interest, it's just to create drama all the way through. Line designs are amazing. They're often, it's the very first thing that you see when you're looking at a design. You see the line movement. It draws your eye through the design so that you can see what's happening with that. And line, to me, is probably, I love working with line materials so that I can create that drama in a design. I can create that emotion. Line gives us that distinction. It's important, and the importance in a design, and it's emotion. It creates emotion. It gives us a mood that we want to create with this. Across again, just continuing, following that through. Repetition again with the lines creates comfort, and it gives us that stability when we're looking at the repetition. Repeat it over and over and over again, then we see it's intentional. And that's the important part when we're looking at creating with this, is it has to be intentional when we're looking at it. Everything that we do, it's there for a purpose, and we're creating line movement for a purpose in this design. It's to kind of stop this being so dramatic on this side and give us a little bit of playfulness with our line movements. So we've added this forsythia to just do that. So now we've added that dynamic line with the forsythia. We've bound it to our Birds of Paradise. That gives us that strength of our diagonal. I also want to add, I've got a fascia that I want to add to this side to help with the visual weight. So we're going to add this in. One on one on the other. And then we're going to create some more interest down into our very base. So I have some leucodendron that I also want to pull to this side. It kind of helps with that color. It kind of pulls that burgundy, that the warm tones of the orange to this opposite side. I still want to emphasize my birds because that's that emphasis that we want. But I kind of want to soften it just a bit and give me a nice paved line of leucodendron across. And what you can see is that we see that coming all the way around, all the way through. One more I'm going to add to this other side just to emphasize it a little bit more. And then I also have a little bit of kalanchoe that I would like to tuck in just right down here at the very base. Kalanchoe, again, is a new cut flower that we're seeing that gives us just a huge impact. They're so long lasting in fresh flower arrangements. It's a little bit more of a red tone, but it gives me a textural impact also that you can see. It draws our eye down. It helps with that visualness, that visual weight that we want to bring down to that. And a little bit of this texture here to pull it across and kind of help adjust with our leaves. I'm also going to add a little bit more leucodendron to that outside. And we're going to turn that pave now into more of a grouping, just because I'm adding a little bit more to that. And sometimes we end up changing our design partway through with that this is intentional, this is what we want it to do, but it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes we have to alter it a little bit. I also want to pull this to the opposite side. So I want to put a little bit of leucodendron to this opposite end to help with that visual stability. I also want to make sure that it's visually balanced, that it's comfortable to look at. If it's not comfortable to look at, then there's an issue with that. So we want to make sure that it's comfortable. So I'm going to add a few little tea leaves to this particular side. So it feels good to me, and it has to feel good. If you're standing there and your head has a tendency to want to turn to make it more comfortable, then you've got to fix that balance. You've got to make it work for you. So I'm adding just a little bit of tea leaves to this one side, just to give me some of that balance, just to make it feel good for me. And one more I want to add here. So now we've taken that diagonal static line, adding that dynamic line with the forsythia, pulled that yellow down to our focal area where we have that pave of button palms, and pulled that coloring down with the leucodendron, the tea leaves, a little bit of that kalanchoe. It gives us that emphasis of drama. That dynamic line really makes that emphasis. So when you're thinking about line designs, make sure you look at what your static line is going to be, and then what dynamic line you want to add to that that gives it that emphasis. So think about all your basing techniques, color impacts, physical and visual balance are essential. So when you're looking at this, make sure that you enjoy using all the products for a line design.